Hi kids. First of all, I want to wish you and your families a happy holiday. Today's video, we're going to be finishing chapter 15, and I'm going to publish it today, which is April 9th, probably by the end of the day. But with all the holidays, it'll go on the calendar for Monday, because I don't want kids to think that this is something that you have to do on a holiday, leading up to a holiday weekend and on a holiday weekend. So again, I'm going to make it today, I'm going to put it up today, but it'll go up for Monday, okay? So once again, wish all of you a very happy, healthy, and safe holiday. Non-traditional, the way it's working, but I know it will still be meaningful and heartwarming. Today's chapter reading is one that I honestly, I don't enjoy. We know that Sarny in chapter 14 had foreshadowed that some dark times were coming, and they're going to be coming today. So I'm just going to read the chapter. There's no theme today. There's no Jimmy. There's no jokes. It's a very serious, very sober chapter, and I'm going to treat that subject matter accordingly. So let me continue. When we left off, Sarny had told Miss Laura that even though there was some real danger, she was going to continue with the school. And Miss Laura said, "I know you think that, but I fear for you, Sarny. I fear for you." Went back to the school and kept teaching, and it kept growing, and nobody came to burn it. Months went by, fall to spring and spring to summer, and nobody came to bother. And I told Miss Laura one morning when we were having coffee in her room, "It's like I said, we're too many for them to keep coming at us." She didn't say anything, but didn't nod either. And I knew she didn't agree with me. And we went ahead and planned on a party she was going to have that night for a senator and some of his friends. "I need this party to go especially well," she said. "The senator is working on a bill governing shipping on the Mississippi, and I have some interest there and need him in a good frame of mind. So we set the party up right. Best food, best wine, and best music. And I didn't head home until dawn the next morning, just first light, and happened to walk past the school when 3 men, they came running out of it, all white men, not hiding their faces. Saw smoke come up from the back of the tent school, and I ran to stop it, but it was too late. They must have put lamp oil on the canvas because it went so fast I near didn't get out my own self. Didn't have time to save anything but a handful of pencils. But I saw the men and knew one of them, name of Haggerty. Ugly man, walked with a limp from a horse breaking his leg years before. He had a booth in the market where he sold leather goods, harness leather. Should have kept my mouth shut, knew it later, and wished to God I had. But I went home, and Stanley, he was just getting ready to go to work, and I swore and told him. So Sarny told us earlier that the first time the school burned, she didn't tell Stanley. She told Miss Laura, but she didn't tell Stanley. And what was the reason she gave for not telling him? That's right. Okay, you remember. She felt, right, that it might raise his anger. And this was really a difficult time for African American, people to push back, considering the laws that were stacked against them in so many different ways. It wasn't just the laws, it was the whole system was stacked against them. And so acting out, fighting back, all of those things, those acts of rebellion, even just for simple justice, was something that was really not tolerated and punished quite severely. And yet this time, Sarny tells him. And we have to wonder why. And kids, I'm not going to tell you that I know the answer. Gary Paulson doesn't really give an answer, nor does Sarny. But I guess the more I think about it, the more, if I were in class and the teacher called on me and I raised my hand, I would say, I think there's something in all of us that demands justice in a world that oftentimes isn't just. That we need to know that we live in a moral world. I think that's one of the reasons why poetic justice was so important as a concept in literature, but particularly to the ancient Greeks in their great plays, their tragedies. The idea that there was a moral structure that was divine, and that the ancient Greeks were polytheistic. They believed in many gods, that the gods would dole out justice and fairness. And I think that Sarny, now that she's had this experience of freedom, I think she feels like there must be justice. And she tells Stanley, let's see what happens. They burned the school. I saw them. One of them was that Haggerty from the leather booth. You sure? I saw him clear as light. Does he know you saw him? I suppose so. He saw me. Well then, I suspect I'll have a talk with him. He was gone before I could stop him. Wasn't thinking right because I hadn't slept all night, and I had an anger on me that burned like a sore. Kept me from thinking straight, and I didn't chew on what I'd done for a full 10 minutes. Stanley, he was slow to anger, but when he did, it was a fright. Only saw it once when he got mad at a mule. Somebody had left tied near the fish booth. Mule kept getting into things, making messes, and Stanley, he went to move the mule, and it wouldn't move. Gentle man Stanley, slow and soft and gentle, kept pulling on the mule, and it wouldn't come, and the mule, it finally bit him. It looked like a snake that fast. It just out and bit him, and he said real soft, "Damn mule," and hit it once right between the eyes, and that mule went down like it had been shot with one of those wheel guns from the war. Now he was going to go talk to Haggerty about burning the school. Wouldn't be a problem, except for Stanley getting his anger up. And Haggerty, he was white. There was freedom, but it wasn't anywhere near clean yet. Some places the colored couldn't use, and some places they weren't allowed to be. And some things they weren't supposed to do, like hitting a white man. Even when they deserved it, hitting a white man was dangerous because it scared other white people who thought on how bad they'd been to black people in the past and were worried on the black people getting it back. And Miss Laura, she said it. My dear Sarny, there are very few things more dangerous than a scared white person because they have all the guns. I should never have told on who I saw, and I knew it, and ran after Stanley, hoping to catch him before he could get to the market. But I was too late. He had a good 10 minutes on me, and the bad luck held because Haggerty, he was there in his booth. People told me later, Stanley, he walked up and said, "My wife, she saw you set fire to the school this morning. Your wife is lying." My wife, she don't lie. Then they say Haggerty, he pushed Stanley away from his booth and called him names. And Stanley, he didn't say anything, but his eyes got a storm in them. And he started into hitting Haggerty. Haggerty was a no count anyway, not much on muscle. And once Stanley, he started, he couldn't stop. And beat him down, and then set into kicking him. It was all over in 5 minutes. He came close to killing Haggerty, and then he walked back to the fish booth, and I came. Saw him there sucking his knuckles, and went over to where everybody was looking down at Haggerty on the ground in front of his booth, and I thought, please don't be dead, please don't be dead. He wasn't, but it didn't matter, and I knew it. I went to the booth and took Stanley over to the side. You have to run. Run? Why? You beat a white man down, and other white men are going to be mad. It will be all right, Sarny. He was just trash. Even white folks knew it. They won't bother me, and even did they want to. I ain't running. We don't run anymore. I have money, a lot of money. You take some and head up north to Chicago. The children and I will follow. Just go, please. I ain't running. It was like a wall standing there. I couldn't get him loose no matter what, and I knew the more I tried, the more stubborn he would get. Couldn't push a wall. Now you go home. I've got work to do, and I'll be along presently. He put his hand on my arm. Head on home now. I'll be along after work. Wasn't anything for it but to go, and I did. Had the day off because of the party the night before, and I spent the day fretting, but he came home that evening, and we had supper, and I thought he was right. Haggerty was trash, and even the whites knew it. I was wrong. They came about middle of the night. I'd been so tired I was in dead sleep and didn't wake up until I felt Stanley moving against me to get up. What's the matter? Thinking on the children, though they were most grown now, always thinking on them. Somebody out front pounding on the door. Cold then, cold cut right through me. Don't go, let them pound. Got to see who it is, might be a neighbor on fire. Don't, but he was gone. I tumbled out and followed him, and he opened the door just as I came. Men on horses, wearing white robes, hoods, some carrying torches. 8, 10 dozen men on horses. And as soon as Stanley opened the door, a man hidden to the side dropped a rope over his neck. Rope was tied to one of the horses, and the rider, he turned and stuck spurs to the horse and took off. Snapped Stanley off his feet and dragged him on out by the neck. I screamed and ran out, but another man hit me in the back of the head with something hard, and I saw a bright light in my brain and went down. Didn't pass out, but I couldn't move, couldn't make my own self get up. Hung like that on my hands and knees, head spinning, thought on the children. Had to get up and help the children, but the men, they didn't bother the children. Didn't bother me anymore. Had what they wanted. And they turned and rode off, dragging Stanley by the neck. So Stanley was killed instantly. Okay, this is let there be no doubt about that. He was killed instantly. Okay. In a few minutes, I could stand. Tyler, he was there helping me, and little Deal, he's standing there crying, eyes wide. Tyler, he just looked mad. Bastards, he said. Don't swear. Couldn't help myself. Though I thought the bad word, I didn't say it. Swearing won't help. I have to go now. Help me to go. Go? Have to find where they took Stanley. Get me to walking right so I can go. Then you and little Dealy stay here. I'll be back after I fetch Stanley. Why, they could take him anywhere. Then that's where I'll go. Get me to walking now. Tyler, he helped me until I was steady. And then he wouldn't go back, but stayed with me. And after a time, I was glad because I leaned on him. They didn't take Stanley far, just back to the market. They had thrown the rope over the poles that held the big sign at the gate into the market and pulled him up, and he was hanging there dead. I expect he was dead before he was out of the yard with a broken neck, but something in me hadn't wanted to believe it, wanted to think he was still alive. But I knew it now and started into crying, while Tyler, he helped me to untie the rope and get him down. They had some trash note written and pinned to his shirt, and I tore it off and threw it away. My poor Stanley, I thought, my poor Stanley. Just wanted to be a man, and look what they did to you. He was scuffed up from the dragging, and I tried to wipe him off with the hem of my sleeping dress. People started to come, and they helped Tyler and me carry him home. Took a door from one of the stalls and used it to carry him, and I cried until I thought my heart would break in two. Couldn't think of anything but my poor Stanley. My poor, dear Stanley. And that concludes chapter 15. Guys, as I was thinking about how I would end today's lesson, which I knew was going to be a very emotional, very sad one, it's very difficult for me to read it. I'm sure it was difficult for you to hear it. I thought I want to end this video, if I can, on something that puts some context to this scene. You know, the teacher in me, I want to leave you with something hopeful, positive, out of this particular tragic scene. So I'm going to leave you with the words of my favorite teacher. I think I've told you who my favorite teacher is many times. That, of course, is Martin Luther King Jr. I never experienced a more hopeful teacher in my life. And I found a good video clip on YouTube that I'm going to share with you at the end of this video. And again, I want to put all of this into a certain historic context for you. And hopefully his optimism and his hopefulness will be transferred through his speech and through his lesson to all of us. So with that being said, kids, I once again hope that you're safe. Stay positive. It's hard to do that, but please find a way to stay positive. And of course, it's a great time for telling our families, particularly this weekend with the holidays, tell your families how much you love them. So no dabbing today. I don't think that's appropriate. I'll just say goodbye and be well.
On a hot day in August 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered a speech that would define the civil rights movement and his legacy. This, of course, was his I Have a Dream speech, delivered on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
The March on Washington served as a massive push for economic and political justice for African Americans. Held during the year celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, crowds marched on the National Mall to watch a variety of musical performances and speeches. Dr. King, a Baptist preacher and prominent civil rights leader, was scheduled to speak towards the end of the day, his debut on the national stage. Up until that point, King mostly addressed small crowds at black churches, rallies, or fundraisers. This time, he would be seen by nearly 250,000 people on the ground, as well as millions at home watching on television. This was an opportunity to reach a wide audience and persuade the public and the government to take action against racial injustice. The night before, King worked with a close group of advisors to get the speech just right. They worked through the night, settling on a final draft in the pre-dawn hours of August 28. Interestingly, the phrase, "I have a dream," a phrase he used in earlier speeches, was nowhere to be found in this copy. The words wouldn't manifest until almost halfway into Dr. King's speech, when gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, who had performed earlier in the day, called out to him from the sidelines to tell them about the dream. King set his prepared remarks aside and improvised the rest, crafting a soaring speech that would sear into the minds of millions of Americans.
No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
The speech was divided into 2 parts. The first listed the injustices that African Americans faced: segregation, police brutality, disenfranchisement, and discrimination, and urged a call to nonviolent action. The second launched into King's dream of peace and racial harmony, a vision of a future in which people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I have a dream.
Highlighting King's skills as a preacher, I Have a Dream was part sermon and part poetry, using rhetorical devices like repetition, rhyme, and vivid metaphor to drive his points home. it was peppered with historic, biblical, and literary references that moved the crowd. This message of struggle and hope became the defining moment not only of King's career, but also the civil rights movement. Both the speech and the March on Washington were credited with helping secure the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, a landmark piece of legislation that ended segregation and banned discrimination on the basis of race or sex in the workplace.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty, we are free at last!
The speech also resonated with activists around the globe. I have a dream. The phrase that wasn't even meant to be in his final draft appeared in political actions all around the world. It's considered one of the world's most transformative and influential speeches, alongside others like Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and Winston Churchill's Blood, Toil, Tears, and Sweat. I Have a Dream is only one of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s many achievements, but it's nonetheless one of the most pivotal.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when we capitalize, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last.